Alberto, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No worries at all. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Me too.
Where I wanted to start was by talking a little bit about your current role. You've taken the step up into your new role. You are now the business leader for the area of the business that you look after. So ultimately that means the buck stops with you.
It does.
And how does that change things for you personally? You know, how do you see your role having evolved over the last few years?
It's interesting you asked me that. I reflected quite a lot about that in the last few months, right? Probably last December when I was asked by Mitsui Sumitomo head office to take this role. I went back to a Harvard Business Review article from a guy called Torbert, but don't quote me because I might have misspelled the name, which basically has a taxonomy of leaders. And the theory goes like this: leaders are not born, but they're made. And for me, I recognize my career in the way that they described a bit, because I don't think I was born leaders. I just learned along the way. The article talked about, that you basically start by saying that you came up as an expert, right? You are an expert or a specialist of some sort, right? In my case, I've always been an IT and operation person. I started in software development, and then I moved on to large scale transformation, program directorship, and restructuring, etc. So expanding, but you are in effect pigeonholed as you're an expert in taking a company from A to B by means of process, people, and technology changes.
Okay, and going back to your original point,
yes,
leaders are made, not born.
I think so.
So it's nurture, not nature.
I think you have some characteristics that are natural.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe you are good with people, maybe you are good at communicating, but in effect, you need to learn. So it may be easier for some and more difficult for others, but it's all about learning.
It's the growth mindset.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my opinion. I may be completely wrong, but that's my opinion.
And everybody can learn, right?
Yes, everybody can learn.
In your opinion, then, does that mean that you think everybody can be a business leader, a CEO?
Well, if they put their mind to it, and they really take the opportunities and the challenges, and they are willing to sacrifice time, effort, and then yes. But clearly you need to have a minimum set of abilities in order to get there, right? So there are some necessary conditions that you need to have, the willingness to take risks, for example, etc. So there are certain things that are, let's call it hygiene factors. There are, in my view, necessary conditions, but not sufficient to become a leader. Cool. If you have those, then you learn. Then it's all about learning.
Right. Yes, there's probably a few people that are listening to this right now thinking, well, I think I have that.
Good for you.
But I don't know. So what's the difference between good and bad? How do you separate those two?
I think that there are certain characteristics that are helpful if you want to become a leader. For example, you need to start by taking risk and being a problem solver as a minimum, because that's the, in theory, that would be a manager. A manager is someone that resolves problems. But if you don't start by solving problems or addressing challenges or put yourself forward to be the person that actually resolve or address the challenge, you don't have any starting point. See what I mean?
So you got to have the confidence.
Yeah, you have to have the confidence to put yourself in front of a problem and say, I am the one that takes accountability to resolve it.
Got it.
And even if you do something wrong, you need to have the humility and the integrity to say, it's my mistake.
Right.
And I think if you do that and you have that, that's a good starting point.
And what it sounds like from this conversation, it sounds like you're somebody that does kind of plan ahead. So you obviously...
To an extent.
Yeah.
I have to.
but developed the skills that you needed to become the leader that you are before stepping into that role. So what I'm keen to understand is, now that you've stepped into the leadership role, what's been the biggest surprise to you, if anything? What stood out as, I wasn't quite expecting that?
It's a very lonely job, and it's really the backstop with you, and it's lonely, right? It's with you. There's no one else to look. Clearly, you can have a mentor, you can have other colleagues to talk to. It's not like black and white. There are shades of grey, but in the main, you are alone.
Yeah.
And I think I always thought that wasn't the case, that I wouldn't feel like that, because you have your team, you have your board of directors or non-executives, but it is like that.
Yeah.
it is quite lonely. At the end of the day, it's a lonely job.
Yeah, it resonates. Yeah, I see that as well, right? And I think.
And I wasn't expecting that to the same degree that I was told I would have expected it.
Yeah. So how does that actually manifest?
Generally, it is about decision making.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it's your decision. Everything at the end stops with you.
And I guess when you're running a large organization like you are, you probably have to accept that not everybody's going to be happy with every decision you make.
Well, you can't make everybody happy. Right. But this is, as I said, I've been in role since February, right? So it's relatively new experience for me in this role. And I guess my first impression is about what I just said. The decision sits with me.
Of course.
I don't have anyone else. I'm not counseling anymore. I'm not an advisor anymore to my board or anyone else. The decision sits with me.
But even at the -1 level, you're still making decisions that impact your organisation.
I'm talking about there are decisions and decisions.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's something
there is a layer of decisions. I'm talking about the more strategic, big ones.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. Clearly, there are others that I don't feel lonely when I take them.
Yeah. And could you give us maybe a hypothetical example of something that is like you say, a business leader decision versus a organization or function head decision?
Well, I started the meeting by saying that a leader is someone that knows where he's going. Well, deciding where you're going, at the end of the day, it's your decision. You take the decisions with everybody else contributes. But at a certain point, you have an array of options, and you need to say, right, sometimes the data speaks for itself, right? It's easy. But most of the time, it's like the fog of war, right? You have 40% of the information and you need to take a decision, or 30% of the information and you need to take a decision. And maybe the information or the decision you need to take you need to take it quickly. And you don't have everything, right? So you can't wait. Otherwise, you go in analysis paralysis, which is not what you want, particularly from a leader, right?
Yeah, it's true.
It's about those type of decisions when you have 40% or 30% of the data available,
and you got to go for it.
And you got to go for it. Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what? I think personally, I'm probably more comfortable with that aspect than the execution and implementation of whatever the plan is as a result of that decision. I'm the other way around, right? Because
of my background. Because I come from program management, program directorship type change delivery. I'm more comfortable.
Yeah.
Deploy a plan and implement rather than shape and then decide. Well, shape, I'm comfortable. It's the decision, particularly when it's a big decision. Right. I'm not saying I'm not taking them. I'm taking it, but I'm just saying it's one aspect of this new job that is new to me for a specific set of decisions that have a material impact on the company, my employees, my customers, et cetera, et cetera.
So look, we talk about decision making, and obviously when you have different opinions around the table and you've got to get to an outcome, how do you handle that?
So let me answer that question in 2 steps by talking about 2 things. The first one is the trick with people talking is that I think as a leader, you have to learn to be there to understand what they're saying, not to respond to what they are saying. If I understand where they're coming from and I understand why they're saying what they're saying, I feel better and empowered, and it's easy for me to be the tiebreaker.
Right.
You see what I mean? That's.
And what role does data play in that?
Data plays a very important role. It's what I use to take away all the emotions, right? So data tells me a lot. Then there are the emotions, the perceptions, the politics of the place, etc., that I will take into account.
Yeah.
Clearly, I have to. So data plays a big role, but you need to balance other aspects, not just data.
Yeah.
I tend to be more data-driven than anything else, but you need to take into account. You need to give a weight to perception, and sometimes, and I did it very recently. I completely discarded the data, and I went to perception only.
Right.
Give you an example. Classic in my field, currently, my field, IT service. KPIs are all green, customer is unhappy. Right. Perception is, it's not working. So take the green KPIs, throw it in the bin, and just follow the customer perception. Feedback.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And do you ever find that in those scenarios, you have to use the data to calibrate on understanding the...
I think data is always important, right? Because what this is telling me is that there is a mismanagement expectation between the service, the technical service level agreements that we have contractually with the customer and what they expect from us in terms of value and quality.
Got it.
Okay? Next time we're going to be in a position to change the contract, we will have to review all of that. Because ideally they are aligned, but if they are not, then there's a problem. Yeah, there's a problem.
Got it. No, that's really helpful. So I guess in summary to your point, the CEO role is something that a lot of people could do, but may not be for everyone. And actually, even if you can do it, it still doesn't mean you're going to be great at it.
Yeah, you can summarize that way. I'm a strong believer that it's a learnable skill. But as I was talking to you the other day, I think that there is an element of luck as well. You need to be at the right place at the wrong time, as I said. When things are going wrong, they may ask you to solve it, or be there at the right time when things are going well, and actually you are, it's like being on a boat on a high tide. Everything goes up. You go up with the other people, and you're so it's there is an element of luck. As well.
And so how did it work for you?
I was lucky. Things were going not well and required a turnaround where I am right now, and I think I built a reputation as a fixer of some sort, or a person that resolves problems, and I've been asked to resolve this problem or address this challenge. So a bit of luck and helped me with that. Now, clearly, when I had to take a decision to accept thinking about all the risks and the drawbacks that are in taking such a decisions. But if you're willing to take the risk and put yourself forward, and then go for it.
Yeah. And does that willingness come in the moment? Or, for you personally, how far ahead were you thinking, actually, I'd really like the opportunity to take on a CEO?
I wasn't looking far ahead, because it came to me like a surprise. In my head, I wanted to stay in the business I wanted to stay in a community of similar businesses. I used to chair the Lloyd's Market Association Operation Committee with peers in the Lloyd's market, and I really enjoyed that. So I wasn't thinking of planning to become the CEO or managing director of a company that provides internal services like back office or IT, et cetera. That's not where I was thinking of going, but the opportunity came. It was for the greater good of the Mitsui Sumitomo Group, and I think at that point you need to take a bullet for the team. We were talking about it the other day again, and it's about when you go up through the rank, you need to be a bit selfish in a way. I know it's not great to say, but you need to be ambitious, right? And ambition nurture a bit of selfishness as well. But you suddenly realize that the more you go up, the more selfless you need to be. Because it's about corporate needs. And if people understand that you're there to support the corporate needs, particularly in a large group, I think that might open up more doors for you. At a certain point, it shifts to something else.
Right.
I think for me, it shifted when I became a director of a company. I think that happened in 2019, and all of a sudden I was a member of a board. And at that point, I wasn't representing my function, although it took me a while to get there, right? Because you're learning. But you were there to address company challenges.
Right.
You're there representing the company. You are a director of the company, so you don't have to look at your functional issues. You need to look at the company, the corporate. And therefore, if you are a team player and you play for team corporate, then sometimes you might take a bullet for everybody else, or you step in to resolve a problem that maybe it's not directly linked to what you do, or you help the team exploit an opportunity that maybe is not clearly in your realm of expertise. It's just you are a corporate citizen.
Right.
And in that, you need to be selfless.
Yeah, and that board experience, I guess, is such fantastic training for taking on a business leader. CEO.
It has been. And again, for the listener, it's not like I was born with that skills. I took coaching and mentorship. When I was appointed, I immediately asked for help. Someone else helped me. I had a number of sessions with executive coaches, etc., to understand how to behave, what's important, how to deal with non-executive director, with a parent, etc. It's not something that you're born with it. You learn.
Yeah,
we go back to the same.
Yeah, of course. We talk a lot about the concept of level 5 leaders, right? It's from the Good to Great book, and the difference being that a level 5 leader doesn't talk about themselves, talks about the company and the team and puts them forward. And over time, it's proven that delivers greater results.
Yeah, and we just go back to the point that I raised before. When you are an expert, you tend to talk about yourself and how good you are about certain things.
Right. Because you need to be selfish.
Exactly. When you are a strategist, when you are a transformation leader, well, you talk about the transformation.
Yes.
You talk about the company. You don't talk about yourself.
You talk about the vision, the strategy.
Exactly. You need to be able to communicate where you're going, right?
Yes.
You're a guide.
Yeah.
It's like one of those guys with the little, the flag. Come and follow me.
So what I would imagine, and I guess is probably the normal thought process, is as you take on more budget responsibility and more responsibility overall, you gain more power, and that leads to arguably occasionally more selfishness around the decisions that you make, right? And almost, as we've talked about,
well, if you're not careful.
Yes, but the route you've gone, it's almost like the counterintuitive way of doing it, but it's what we believe is the way to do it as a business leader in the modern world, right?
I think so. I think you need to think about, I go back to my initial response to your first question. It's about, is it worth it? And if it's worth it, who benefits? Can we make sure that the employee are benefiting from this, the group, the customers, etc.? It's always about that, because otherwise it becomes, as I said, it becomes a selfish decision, right? You always need to almost step back and think. So my natural instinct, I'm impulsive as a person, right? I tend to be reactive naturally.
Okay.
But being reactive naturally is not a good trait for a CEO or a MD. I think that's a no-no. So for me, it's about coaching myself not to be reactive. I fail most of the time, but when I don't fail, I feel good about it.
It's a difficult one though, right? Because I guess on a tactical level, for the day-to-day things, it's good to be reactive and make decisions quickly.
I think it helped me in the past, right, Luke? Right. Because as a CEO or as a problem solver or expert or something, being reactive helps you with resolve a problem very quickly.
Keep momentum going.
Yeah. Momentum going, resolve a problem very quickly, next, and you're being successful. When you change and you are now in a position, being reactive doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing.
You need to be measured.
You do very measured, and you need to take into account all the impact of your decisions across multiple stakeholders. You need to be much more, not only measured, but really thinking holistically about the impact that a decision has across all the stakeholders.
Right.
And I think that's the trick.
It's so interesting.
But I need to catch myself.
Yes.
And as I said, I fail all the time. But I'm always trying to catch myself in when I'm in reactive mode, step back,
Yeah, of course. And the thought that comes into my head is, we talk about nature or nurture.
Yeah.
the more natural CEOs.
It's like trading places.
Right, it is.
Experiment, the $5 experiment.
Yeah. Those more natural CEOs, that more natural kind of leadership style, who are probably inherently more measured, by design, by nature. Are they as strong at the coming through the ranks roles, at the advisor? They might, because I don't think there is only one way of coming up. Okay.
It depends on what you do.
That's
right?
true.
For me, personally, being an operator, primarily dealing with, transformation, change, delivery, projects, systems, integration, it helped me in the past, but it may not help a deal maker or someone that comes through the rank of, from a commercial background or deal making.
Or finance background.
Right? So.
And back to the point around
Again, it's all about learning.
Yeah.
When you arrive there, then know who you are, know what are the characteristics that may trip you over.
It's about being self-aware.
Yes, I think so. You need to be.
So what are the key obstacles of that you observe people face when they're trying to make this transition?
I notice that people they tend to be territorial.
Right.
At a certain point, they slip, and then they hurt themselves. Being territorial, it's a double-edged sword, because on one end, allows you to have a strong team, a strong division, or whatever, but at the same time, you may be seen as an empire builder. So territorialism, if that's a word, I think it's something that I see people slipping on that.
Right. And I think previously, when you look back at organisations and even the current organisational models, they actually allow for that territorialism
I don't even know whether it's a word. Yeah.
That's kind of the way that businesses have been designed, is it not? Mm-hmm. And you see that starting to evolve and change in today's world?
It's taking, you take more territory, you become more powerful. However, there is a different theory around territory. If you look at history, Britain, for example, became an empire by having superiority, naval superiority. That's a naval superpower. It's not a territory. It's not about territory. Russia or Germany in the past, they've always been territorial. They built their power over the territory. So my point is that you can be a naval superpower and achieve wherever you need to achieve. US is the same, I think. They are a naval superpower, in my view. Similar to what the British Empire was in 1800s, 1700s.
That's very true. How do you take those concepts and apply those into the business world?
It all comes down to do the right things for the corporate. If by doing what you're doing, you are making the company better, whether it's more revenue, less cost, better people, happier people, better talent, better capability, whatever you do, then I'm sure you're going to get a payoff.
Right.
Simple as that. There is another characteristic, if you don't mind, that I've seen sometimes being successful, but in the long term, I'm not sure it is. And again, it's just an observation. I'm not saying that what I'm saying is right or wrong. I'm just saying I observe that self-promoters, they always they get caught up.
Right.
In the end, people that are really self-promoters, they get caught up.
How would you define a self-promoter?
Someone that it's basically everything that happens is about him or her.
Got you.
All the good things that are happening is because of him or her. That's the way I would say. And it's someone that takes credit for everything, and is never there for. If you know what I mean.
I do. I know exactly what you mean.
And I think that's something that it could be a good strategy for a while, but in the long term, I don't think is a winning strategy.
Well, going back to the book, Good to Great, and that's what the whole thing's about, right? So the study is based on there are leaders who drove a spike in performance in their organization but weren't able to maintain it over time, versus those that maintained performance over time, which way outperformed. And actually the big difference was that those that drove the spike and then didn't maintain talked about me, I, we, them. They looked at interviews and basically said, look, the amount of words that were about them as an individual rather than about the team were far, far, far greater than the level 5 leaders who drove performance over time, who talked about the team, far less about them, right?
Yep.
So it proves your point.
Okay, good.
That's what the data says. But okay, cool. So what we're effectively saying here is that modern day leaders, they have to be company first thinkers. They need to be selfish to an extent to get to that point and probably maintain a level of that selfishness. But at a certain juncture, they need to become company first.
That's my observation. I'm not I'm not Mr. Porter or any other luminary on strategy or leadership, but my observation, my personal experience, lived experience tells me that that's the case.
Right.
I think I am honest with the people, so what you see is what you get, definitely. That I lead by example. So if I'm the guide with the little flag saying, let's go and see the Mona Lisa, come and follow me at the Louvre. So leading by example and have integrity. And if something goes wrong, I'll take accountability. So in summary, you need to be accountable. It's it's you. The buck stop with you. You need to have integrity. you need to lead by example and be determined. You need to have determination as one of your characteristics.
Once you get to that advisor role in your example or experience, at what point did you recognize in yourself that you could take that step up and go further? And did that happen at the same time as you wanting to take that step up? Or did you realize you could do it first and then the opportunity came?
I think the latter. I think I realized that I could do it. Because at a certain point, you look around and you think, okay, I think, if these are my peers, and here's my boss or whatever, and by the way, look at other companies, and you start compare and contrast yourself with others that are your peers or work in other companies, and you think there is a point when you say, I think I can do that. I can, if these are my peers, then I think I can do it. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I think I can do it. Because it's not that you don't have self-doubt. Your self-doubt has to exist, right? Because otherwise, it's a bit difficult. Otherwise, you have a God complex. But it's about compare and contrast yourself to others, and then say, I think I can be better than you, or equal with you, or whatever, and therefore I think I can take that job.
Right.
It's about comparing. Yeah.
And so my argument would be that actually it probably doesn't come down to luck, because once you have that observation and you see that in yourself, ultimately others do too, right? And that's where the opportunities come from.
Potentially. Yeah. That's a good observation.
That's what I see, because
But you need to have a bit of luck. Because if you don't have the opportunity, how can
the opportunity needs to be there.
Yeah.
So let's look at when you think about the organisations today, right? The current modern day way that businesses are structured, it's evolving at a rapid pace, right? And you are now in the role that you're in, kind of responsible for that evolution within your own organisation, right? And you've probably seen this happen over a number of years. But what is your view on how future-proof organisations are currently?
That there has been an evolution of how companies are organised, but at the end of the day, we're still broadly a hierarchical organisation,
right?
Broadly speaking. So it's still based on the archetype of the military organisation back in the days. But I am very convinced that there are organizational constructs that are better suited to resolve a problem or address a challenge within a company.
Okay.
So,
can you give us an example?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no one size fits all. And I think the company has to adapt to whatever problem or opportunity is in front of them, and deploy an organizational construct that is fit for purpose. Of course. For example, you and I discussed this, but if you go, I go back in time, 2,000 years ago plus, the Roman Senate would elect a dictator. A dictator was someone that was assigned a task, resolve one problem, and it was given full power for a specific amount of time. It's one problem, I think maximum 6 months. It was elected by the Senate, and he had to resolve the problem. It was full power. But you can see how something like this that works for, resolve a problem quickly. Yeah. We have a problem, we need to have, full hierarchy, full power, done. Interim, 6 months, interim
dictatorship.
Exactly. But then you can see how this concept or archetype can go out of hand.
Of course. Yeah.
If the problem becomes all problems, then you get a dictatorship, a proper one. You see what I mean? Yeah. So handled with care.
It needs to, zero scope creep allowed.
Well, exactly. It needs to be, so similarly when you run, if you talk about the 70s and 80s, it's about, the project organization.
Right.
Everything is a project. So, has got advantages and disadvantages. It's having a project-based organization helpful in certain cases, but now is evolving. Now you have Scrum Masters,
right?
Or, and I think, or multifunctional teams to resolve a problem, which is equivalent to a Scrum Master. So what I'm saying is that there are different organizational constructs that are they are very useful in certain circumstances. There's not one size fits all. Yeah. And I think the trick is flex your organizational muscles to adapt to the situation.
So in that world where you need flexibility,
I think so.
Pretty good at working with ambiguity as well, I guess, and working in the grey. So how do people prepare for that new way of working? Because let's be honest, it's a complete revolution from where we've been historically, right?
I do agree that it's difficult. I think being comfortable with ambiguity is one of those necessary conditions that I was talking to you before to become a leader. Because if you don't have that, it's going to be almost impossible for you to operate as a leader.
Right.
You need to be comfortable with uncertainty. You need to be comfortable when things are not all clear. It's really about being comfortable with ambiguity. And if you have that, then you don't need to prepare too much because you accept what's coming without knowing everything, and you just adapt to a new situation.
Yeah.
Is that the trick, I think? Because then knowing whether you want to apply a strictly hierarchical, multifunctional matrix, whatever organizational construct you want, every organizational construct plus and minuses and advantages, disadvantages, and every problem is different. But if you know that you can cope with not knowing everything, not being able to control everything, that there are things that are outside your control and you're fine with it, and then you're okay.
Yeah. So as a leader, it's about having a relatively high level of EQ, a level of confidence in your own ability to take decisions.
I think it's a combination of things. I think you need to I think you need to have both EQ and IQ. I think that you need to have a mix.
Yeah. And we talked about the kind of the general progression into those leadership roles, right? Yeah. From expert to advisor into leader.
Yeah.
But in that new way of operating, particularly in those multifunctional teams, are those opportunities going to be as prevalent, do you think? Or will that path in itself change?
I think that opportunity will always be there for the people that want to take them. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? It's not. I don't think there are specific trends that I want to mention here, but it's about making sure that the person, whoever wants to become a leader or aspire to be a leader or is a leader, is giving the opportunity to the people, and the people take that opportunity.
Right.
It's about making those opportunities available. Yeah.
And we talked about as a leader, you've got to have that combination of EQ and IQ.
I think so. I think it's, I think you need to have both.
Yeah.
And, maybe when you come up the ranks, the IQ side is more important than the EQ side.
Of course.
But then at a certain point, they shift around. I think you need to have maybe a prevalent EQ than IQ. Anyway, it's a combination.
The fear for me, I guess, in some respects, when I think forward, is when we think about IQ being more important at a lower level in an organization, probably.
Maybe.
Actually, IQ is always going to be best served up by computers in the long run, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe not. I mean, to me, the question is, will general artificial intelligence, when general artificial intelligence will be deployed in the enterprise? If general artificial intelligence is deployed in the enterprise, then we might need to discuss this. It might have an impact. Until then, with current large language models and current artificial intelligence, I don't think that's a problem.
Of course. But it's interesting that you changed that to say when rather than if.
I think it's a when. I don't know when. It may be 30 years from now, maybe 50 years from now, maybe 100 years from now. I don't know. But when, at that point, that's when the real shift is, I think.
And can we talk in hypotheticals about that point? You know, what do you envisage the shift being?
Well, if you have a computer or a quantum computer that can resolve any generic problems you assign, and if I go a step further, it might become sentient or conscious. At that point, you have a surrogate human being.
Right.
And at that point, you question, when are you using a human being and when are you using the computer? Okay, we are talking about realm of sci-fi at the moment. We are, science fiction at this point in time, but I think it's a matter of time, because I think at a certain point we're going to get there.
Yes.
Probably not in our lifetime, I don't think, but...
There's constant pressure around costs within organizations, right, which drives you in that direction naturally, because automation is, at the moment, the flavor of the month, of the year. And I would suspect that's going to continue, right?
Yeah, the flavor is intelligent, what they call intelligent automation, right? Yeah. It's the evolution of robots process automation, robotic process automation into intelligent automation, the use of large language model to answer questions, etc. But at the moment, those things are as good as what we feed them to. And therefore, there will be certainly opportunities for efficiency improvement, and the AI is real. It's a real business. It's not like the .com bubble, I don't think. But it's not as transformational as if we were creating general artificial intelligence. That's an order of magnitude different, I think, or two.
To summarize on that point, because I do think it's a really important one, and one that I think about a lot. If on paper, let's say, at a lower level of an organization, you probably are measured more on the IQ that you bring into your role. More so than anything else, because you are an expert at that point.
Well, I would argue that in the last few years, there has been a effort within an organization to start measuring people on the what and how.
Of course.
Many organizations are now doing performance appraisal, that not only 360, but also on the what you achieve and how you achieve it. And I think the 360 and the how is more about on the EQ side. And the what is more about on the IQ side.
Right.
And I think you can see that there is a series of steps towards measuring both.
Of course.
So I think that's what's happening. Yeah. Again, simply observing.
Yeah, and I see it too. On a philosophical level, without going into this in much more detail, I think you take that back a step to, okay, what happens pre-work, school? It's probably not happening there enough yet, right? It's still much more about academics and IQ than anything else.
Yes, school, definitely.
Right.
Yes.
Because I think, closing this point out, if you look forward, leaders and people that are ultimately taking decisions probably rely as much, if not more, on their EQ than they do on their IQ.
Generally, probably. Well, again, it probably, as I said, I don't feel qualified to make general statements, but I'd say that for certain profession, EQ is definitely where it's more important. Right. If you are in sales and if you are in commercial, maybe you start with EQ, right? Mm-hmm. Even at a low level. Engineering, software engineering, or any discipline within the engineering field, you probably more IQ.
Right.
At least at the beginning.
But should everybody not be thinking about developing those sales skills to future-proof themselves?
I would agree with that point, yes. Yeah. So, I think we should.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so final question for you.
Yeah.
And we always close the conversations with this question.
Okay.
So what do you know now that you wish you knew earlier in your career?
I wish I knew everything that I know now when I was at the beginning of my career.
Okay, so let's narrow it down. So what's the main thing that you wish you knew now, or that you know now that you wish you knew?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, as you go through your career, you gain experience, and the accumulated experience over 20 years, 25 years of my career,
right,
cannot summarize in just a few points. But if at the beginning of my career I had that body of knowledge, then I would have done much better. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
But if I have to give you an example,
because does that not come down to experience more than anything else?
I think if you boil it down, it comes down to experience. Yes, it's because you have more knowledge, you understand people better, you have much more experience in dealing with, you have you already encounter certain situation, and you know what worked and didn't work. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably what it is that with 25 experience in a field, and you go back and you bring with you all that experience, I think you boil it down to you already seen this, and therefore you know what is going to work and it's not going to work.
Yeah,
I think that's an important point to me.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thanks, Alberto.
Pleasure.
Cheers.